Welcome everyone to this fourth webinar in our series of webinar dedicated to make Japan a success, either for the people that are willing to come to Japan or to come back again, Tessa, or for those who are already here. So today the topic is about professional hurdles, who to talk to when we face issue in the workplace. So just to introduce, so we have a special guest that is Richard Ledoux with us. So we will introduce you, Richard, just after this. So Sandrine, you want to start introducing yourself?
Yes. So I'm from Belgium. We moved to Japan 2 years ago. I followed my husband there. So I left everything behind to follow him. And the first year was quite tough, but then the second year is better. So that's why we planned this.
Webinars? Oh, yeah, you are a bit frozen now, Sandrine. So let me continue.
From a professional perspective. I think that's it.
Yes, we missed part. I mean, I at least missed part of your introduction, so I'm not sure about the other.
Okay. Okay.
Have you heard what's on
my connection?
No, I think you just after you follow your husband, it was tough the first year and then blank.
It's better the second one.
Yes, and I left everything behind for my husband, so it was tough.
Yes, and
my connection is really bad. I'm so sorry about that.
Okay, so I can say that we both met in a professional, let's say, female network here in Japan, and because we are sharing same background in terms of project management, change management, so we launched Lemon Boost, and we wanted to support company through change. Here in Japan is mostly cultural change and inclusion. So we are supporting company to better collaborate. So myself, I'm Marie. I'm half French and half African. I also follow my husband, very original. I follow him before in Singapore for 7 years. I'm passionate about the topic today, so don't hesitate to stop me. I can talk about this a lot. So Sandrine knows that at some point she might need to to remember me the timing. Yes. After working 20 years more in the corporate world, supporting change and dealing with people, I embrace a new, I actually started to study psychology and behavioral and cognitive psychology in particular, because I wanted to understand what goes in our mindset and to better support people while going through change. So I'm also invested in students' well-being, not only, let's say, employee. Last thing I wanted to say is we are both part of a mentorship program where we also support women while they transition to Japan, and some of them because they follow their husband. So today we have our special guest, Richard Ledoux. Such a long experience here in Japan. So Richard, you moved here when you were, I think, 27 years old, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I was more young at that time.
Oh, younger than
my first experience was when I was 20 as a cook when I came for the first time in Japan. Just to introduce myself, I was born in Clermont-Ferrand in the center of France. My parents were doctors, and I decided, to stop to go to the college, and I would to work very early. And I joined a restaurant in Clermont-Ferrand who had 1-star Michelin. to learn about the base of the French kitchen. And after that, I joined Pierre Gagnère in Saint-Étienne. It was a long time ago, who had 3 stars Michelin. And he was a consultant for a famous company in Japan. The name is Daiwa House, house maker. And at that time, we did a lot of promotion. And every 2 months, I had to come to Japan. And after a few years, I changed my mind and I decided to move and to work as a pastry chef. That's why I worked with Pierre Hermé. And Pierre Hermé at that time was the chef of Fauchon for 11 years. And as a communication tool at the beginning to promote the French pastry, we published a lot of books and also did a lot of promotion outside of France. And it was 1996 when I came for the first time under the Pierre Hermé banner in Japan, where we did a collaboration with the Hotel New Otani. In 1997, we received a letter from Mr. Otani himself, who invited me to make for his family the 2 Christmas logs for his Christmas. And from that time, I'm living in Japan. First of all, I was one of the employee of the Hotel New Otani. And I quit the hotel, set up the representative office, then create the subsidiary, buy out the franchisee. Then it was a very long journey during the last 3 decades. A very interesting story.
Yes, and you are an experienced entrepreneur. You are married to a Japanese wife, and so you really have that experience of Japan that we are looking at. So thank you so much for being here today. And you are also invested in school and
yes, in many fields.
Sorry?
In many fields.
Yeah, in many fields. So thank you so much. We know you are a busy person, so thank you for being with us today. So our agenda is so today we talk about our professional hurdles. So who shall we talk to when we face issues? So first point we're going to talk about is remember why talking is good for us, even though we tend not easily to share about hurdles. It costs some effort. And then, of course, once we will be clear on these 2 aspects, who shall we talk to? Because there are some risk against opening up. And we will end the session today with the 5 considerations that we advise to check before opening up about the work challenges. And at the end, because you're just 2 of us, so you can ask the questions if you have, of course, and benefit from Richard's experience. So first, why talking is good for you. So here I put this graph because I wanted to insist on the scientifically, so it is scientifically proven that talking, expressing, and verbalizing things are really important for all the reasons that are displayed here. And what is important is when you talk, this is the most, according to the study that you can see here, talk to someone is the simplest way to release your stress, the fastest and the simplest. Of course, sports, exercising, breathing, and so on are also important, but really what works best is really to talk to someone. So that's my first point. Then what's important, so what do we gain when we talk? We gain that perspective and advice, problem solving, of course. So it's important when we express our hurdles, there are 2 aspects of it. One is to focus on the problem solving. So I have a problem, I need to find solutions. So this is one aspect. And the second aspect is actually I feel this way and I need to express my feeling. So if you focus more on the problem solving, of course, you get ideas of solution, you get new perspective, you can seek advice. But if you just focus on that, you are missing the emotional part. So that's my point here. It's also important to remember that getting the validation of our feelings is important. Then we feel we are not alone, and having that emotional support so we can build authentic relationships. And COVID-19 have proven that in the workplace, having that authenticity is important, especially between managers and subordinates, rather than having, you know, the poker face and the samurai face, sometimes more here in Japan. So Risha, I get back to you after the second slide, because I just want to, so this is the first statement. So talking is good for us, and we need to balance these both aspects to really be able to navigate the adversity and become more resilient. And the second is so there is a but, we dare not to speak about our others. There are many fears around speaking up. I put here the latest study from Harvard Business Review. The study was in Europe and in the US, where 45% of employees recognize that they are reluctant to share their professional hurdles. So there are definitely negative perceptions about seeking help. Cultural norms and education will, of course, depending if we come from Europe or if we are half Japanese or half, I don't know, American, if we were educated only in Japan, all this will count in the picture, in our ability to speak openly. The other aspect is, of course, the trust. When you talk about your problem, there are some confidentiality concerns. You need to make sure that it's not going to be some retaliation aspect later, and concern about the impacts on your career, on your evolution. So Risha, I wanted to ask you,
Yes.
what about you? So moving to Japan, so you said as a young pastry chef, are you more a problem solver? Where do you?
To be honest with you, since I joined that celebrity chef, I had the chance to do a lot of mission abroad, including US, Australia, etc. But Japan was my first long expatriation, and believe me, I was not prepared for that. I have two experiences in Japan. The first one was when I came alone close to 30 years ago, and I was at that time employee of the Hotel New Otani, and it was a big hotel, you know, in the heart of the city, because at that time they had maybe more than 2,000 keys for the rooms, and also maybe more than 3,000 employees, and I was a part of that employees, and it was very difficult for me because concerning the culture gap, and also concerning the fact that I couldn't manage to speak a word of Japanese, and also they couldn't manage to speak in French. And believe me, the first three months were very interesting, because it was a way for me to discover a new world. But after that, it was like a nightmare every day, because it was very frustrated, because you cannot manage. It was complicated because I couldn't manage the team. It was also difficult for me to explain which kind of experience I had in Japan with the Paris team. Because if you don't face that situation, it's difficult also to explain to somebody. And after 3 years of a lack of communication, lack of language, and also lack of somebody close to me, you know, to have that kind of exchange. It was very difficult, and I decided to leave. And after 3 years, I left Japan. I moved to South America, where I could travel during 8 months. I was a backpacker at that time, and I had a long time, to think about my experience in Japan. And I felt I missed some part, and that's why I came back another time, to see how I can manage to feed up all the part I couldn't manage the first time. I mean, in terms of language, in terms of exchange, in terms of relation with the people, etc. But believe me, it took me a lot of time.
And in the end, what was the turning point? Because you said, so you took time to think about it, then you came back.
Yes.
Is it that you felt more comfortable with the Japanese language, or you organize differently so that you can get that support?
Can you imagine? It was 30 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, Tokyo was a totally different city. At that time, we had only 3 luxury hotels and a few foreigners. When I worked at the Hotel New Otani, I think we were 2 or 3 foreigners only for 3,000 people. And it was not a destination also for tourism. Then it was also difficult for the Japanese people, for sure, to collaborate and to work with me every day. After I took some time for me to think about what the experience I had in Japan the first time, I made me a lot of promise as learn the language. It helped me a lot, to understand, because if you don't learn the language, and if you don't speak the language, particularly in Japan, it can be difficult to understand their culture and also their history. When you come from Clermont-Ferrand as a city, as Clermont-Ferrand, with part of the history of France, and where you can see very easily which way the French people took during the past to come up to where we are now. For Japan, it's more complicated because in 200 years, it was very short, where they moved from the Shogun part to the part we know currently. And it was very difficult for me to understand the way they move, they live, which kind of history they have, to understand the culture, etc. And yes, it was very complicated. And also at that time, Japan was a very exotic destination. It was not that popular as it is now. And yes, it was very complicated. It was a very complicated experience. And also what it permit me to stay in Japan, I found the right partner, I mean my wife, who can give me all the keys, to understand the culture, the language, and also the code also of the people, particularly for business.
Yeah, the
It was a
knowledge.
big challenge for me to find somebody, who has the same language, who can understand me, and who had also the same vision as me. Yes, I think it was a big move for me.
Okay. Yes, Sandrine?
Yes, I don't know if you hear me, but if you have been told before coming to Japan about the strong adjustment, would you have been open to listen and to act differently?
No, because believe me, 30 years ago, I had no idea about what's happened in Japan. Yes, for sure, when I was very young, I saw some Japanese anime, but I never understand what I will face when I came in Japan, for me now, it was a crazy idea.
Yeah.
If I knew that, I will never came, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe not knowing what you could expect actually allow you to experience without. But you learn the lesson the hard way. So since then you've been to Japan. You are a successful entrepreneur. So in your daily activity today, how do you manage to finally build that network? So you talk about, of course, your wife, but in your professional life.
Well, half of the success, sorry, ladies, but half of the success is belonging my wife, for sure, because she was very supportive. And also, as I told you, she gave me the keys, to understand the culture and also the business-wise here in Japan. After that, I had the chance also, because if you can manage to speak the language, it's more easy to contact people and also to start relationship. Around me, I have strong relation with a lot of Japanese friends. I suppose they are friends who I can trust them and also believe in them. It was very supportive for me, to understand, for example, the way the bank to manage the bank here in Japan, to manage also the employees, to understand the Japanese law, etc. When I came back the second time, the first choice I made was to do not live in Tokyo. I choose to live in Urayasu, in the suburb of Tokyo, to understand how the people live there. I mean, how they can spend in supermarkets, how they can spend for apartments, etc. It was very important for me to feel and to also to understand the market. And at that time, you had a lot of expats in Tokyo who came, to bring back all that luxury brands as Dior, Louis Vuitton, etc. But I was not so appealed to and attracted to live with them, because I thought it was my future to understand the Japanese market and to understand the Japanese customers. And 30 years ago, when you left in Chiba, it was like a challenge every day. To fix all the administrative papers, to find an apartment, to buy a car, etc. But it was also that fun part who engaged me to stay in Japan, because every day I took it like a challenge.
Okay, so it's interesting. So I'm moving to the next slide, because from what you share, you actually got the support from the private sphere, because I wanted also to discuss how to pick the perfect confidant, and depending on the situation that we are through. So for you, you explained that it was either your spouse or the Japanese friends helping you on understanding Japan, business culture, and so on, Japanese customers. So the other aspects, of course, are shall we speak to colleagues? Shall we speak to managers? So this here in Japan is due to the culture, is also a particular business culture where it's not a norm, let's say, to openly speak about problem. What could you share on that? Is for you, is it true that Japanese
It's complicated, because they are seeing you as the god. I mean, if you are the CEO of the company, you are on the top of the pyramid, then it's complicated to share all your stress, all your problems with your colleagues or with your employees. And it's complicated because if you don't find a sphere where you can exchange that kind of problems, I mean, you are always alone. And yes, of course, in the company, you have a few people on the top of, you can have very strong exchange or very transparent conversation. But the problem is, it's not the majority of your colleagues or employees. You have to create your own circle of people you can trust, and you can have a very transparency conversation.
Yes.
And
Okay.
it's complicated to find that people, you know.
Of course, it's more complicated when you have responsibilities,
Yes.
and definitely as a CEO, you as you said, you are always alone, and I think it's really complicated for people that are handling responsibility, especially as foreigners here. Of course, if you are not in the same position, a colleague might be, again, depending if you are on a problem solving or if you are more looking on emotional support. For example, a colleague could be a good pick if you're talking about the new manager, if you're talking about. So what's important is really to be clear on what we need, and then approach the person that we consider could be the most helpful, depending on the need, but not. I think the risk come when we are ignoring exactly our need. So it's really important. So we talk about colleagues, managers. Managers, depending if you're an employee, it's not recommended to go straight forward to your manager. It really depends. Maybe having some other point of view before approaching the manager could be also let's say a better strategy. And then I wanted to talk about the home country, because when we are in Japan as foreigners, of course, depending if you are here as long as Richard, so of course you have built a network here in Japan. If, like Sandrine and I, you just moved here, so you are still in progress. What about approaching the home country, because they are far from Japan, and is it a good idea for you to try to explain back in the home country what we experience here? Are they really able to understand?
I'm not sure. No, I'm not sure, because it's too extremity, you know. It's Far East, and it's very, very far in terms of culture, in terms of language, in terms of manner, in terms of many things. Then when you try to compare two extremity, it's very complicated. And no, you know, the first move I did in Japan, when I told my family I'm moving to Japan, they said, okay, which part of China is? Then, then it was the end of the conversation.
Yeah, it's I mean, we do believe with Sandrine, and it's also something that we advise to accept that there will be gap, there will be differences with your home country. It might not be the good pick. Again, if you're looking at emotional support, maybe you can easily get it, but if you're looking at perspective, ideas, then definitely someone in Japan would be more appropriate, because then you have this common ground in knowing at least what you are facing as a foreigner here. So one advice is really to approach a network and to build networks here in Japan versus going back to what you knew.
You know what? It was very difficult for me at the beginning to understand that point, because when I arrived in Japan, first of all, Pierre Hermé, we started in Japan. The name of the brand is Pierre Hermé Paris, but originally we started the first store here in Japan in 1998 at the Hotel New moved to Tokyo Disneyland, and the third one was 3 years after in Paris. And you know, when you arrive in a new country like Japan, I met a lot of people to get their advice concerning the fact, you know, as it was quite new for the Japanese people to eat that kind of pastry. It was quite sweety, it was quite big. And I tried, you know, to get many advice. And some people told me, you have to change the sweetness of your products, you have to change the size. And what is difficult at the end, you have to decide by yourself what is the best for you, what is best for your customers, and you have to trust you and to go as you want. And it was the most difficult part, I think, at the beginning.
Yes. On that aspect particularly, do you think that having a peer-to-peer support, like I don't know, some other CEO, of course, back in the days, there might not be as many foreigner CEO here in Japan, but do you think that would have helped?
You know what? At the beginning, I was pastry chef at the Hotel New Otani. I couldn't. I didn't have that network, and also it was difficult, you know, for a pastry chef to meet that CEOs or to get that advice, you know. Time to time, yes, I met the people of French Chamber of Commerce or the embassy people, etc. But they can't tell you what you have to do. But I'm not sure it was a good advice at that time.
So
And to find your own way, yes, it's difficult because you have to take your own responsibility, and that's it. And lucky I was, because it was for sure the right timing. I met the right people, and that's it.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why it was not the advice that you received from embassy and from Chamber of Commerce? What you had the perception that it doesn't fit your needs?
Because what I felt it was they could give me good advice, but they never had that kind of experience themselves, you know. And it was the point, because you can believe somebody who did it, but it was not the case, you know. And also all that people, they are coming only for 2 or 3 years, and I'm not sure they can manage to speak the language of the country they are going. And also the fact was, at that time, you couldn't find a pastry shop in the streets of Tokyo. A few in luxury hotels, but we were like pioneer in what we did.
Okay.
And also, you know, to find all that European ingredients, chocolate, almond powder, etc. But it was a nightmare at that time.
So what would you advise a new let's say pastry chef, or taking a franchise, or taking the same kind of responsibility today?
I think the most the most difficult part, you know, when you are coming from France, is to forget about what you learn in France, and to readapt yourself for the country you will live. I mean, I worked in many countries as Russia, America, Australia, etc. And each time it has to be a different story, and you have to readapt yourself for the country you are living there. And I think this is the most important part, because as French people or European people, I don't know, each time you try to compare with what you had in your own country before, but it doesn't work. It's just losing time.
Yeah, so you have to be open, and to let's say to
just accept the difference.
Yes, open, accept the difference, but accept. Okay, I move to the next slide because I think something is missing here. So the 5 key considerations that we wanted to highlight today before opening on the professional hurdles is really, first, we talk about trust. So in the next slide, we have the questions, the formal questions, but just to list them: trust, relevance, objectivity, empathy, the willingness to listen, and the gut feeling. So about the trust, what is important is, once, as you said, when you open, so of course as a CEO you can't talk to your subordinates. If you are like any professional, you can't just open to anyone in the company. So be able to define whether the person can keep your concern confidential, if this person is reliable based on what the relationship that you have. And of course, this is difficult when you have a new relationship, as you shared, Richard. And also to consider what could be the interest of the person to help you, because it could be counterproductive. We know that our colleagues, other managers in different departments can have what we call the hidden agenda. So they could be ready to help you, but actually they will use the information. They might use the information for other purposes, or for this, their self, let's say, their own objectives. On the second consideration, the relevance, is the person able to share meaningful advice? So for you, Richard, you say how it was important to get from your spouse the culture and what. So it's really important also to choose someone who can really get that expertise. So again, here we are more in the problem solving aspect. So finding the person with the right expertise, the right experience, and the role is important. On the third point, the objectivity, this is important because, and this is the, let's say, the trap when we go to the private sphere and the friends, because they might agree and nod to whatever. Oh, this is awful. Yes, you are right. Oh, but not really able to really be objective. So it's important to make sure that the advice that you get is really free from this kind of biases, the neutrality, and the genuine support. And then the empathy. This is more, of course, on the emotional support. Sometimes we just need to be listened to. There are no solutions, but maybe, we are overwhelmed, and being in Japan is really overwhelming. Whatever you described, Richard, in the first three months and the first 3 years, it's sometimes you just need to remove the, and I didn't use that image earlier, but for the emotions, the more you try to keep them, if you don't just simply release your emotions, it requires a lot of energy, just like a ball that you need to keep below the water. So it needs strength and energy to bring it down. And the gut feeling, this is Sandrine. So you want to develop on that?
No, and also I wanted to add the fact that to take back your word, you need to reinvent your product, but Japan is such a unique market that you need to reinvent yourself. That means that if you talk to someone who knows you for years, he put you in a way in a kind of box, and you may have to try new things in Japan because of the market. So you need to be able to exchange with someone who is enough open-minded to consider the fact that you can move from one box to another one in terms of leadership, in terms of action as well. And gut feeling, yes, because you quickly connect with people when you arrive in Japan. It's easy. There are a lot of networking with quite of social interaction, but not more. And at a certain point, you need to feel it that, okay, this is the person I might exchange further with. Mm-hmm. We have a question regarding from Tessa, the hospitality industry in Japan. So the Japan hotel market is expected to grow significantly between now and 2028. Do you think Japanese hotels are keen to recruit foreigners? What are the most important skills you need as a foreigner if you want to work in the Japanese hospitality industry? Thank you.
10 years of experience.
No.
Oh, really?
10 years.
Or you have a Japanese husband, you marry a Japanese citizen, or you have 10 years of experience. For example, all the chefs we are bringing to Japan, they have 10 years minimum of experience. And from that part, you can get a skilled labor visa, or you can come with what you have also working holiday visa, but it's only for one year, and after it's complicated, you know, to transform it for a long visa. Then you have a few options. And yes, for hospitality, you have a lot of opportunities. A lot of new brands are coming to the market as Capella, Rosewood, Waldorf, etc., or new brands as Janu, Indigo, etc. I think we have 65 luxury hotels more who are coming to the market. Yes, Japan is a destination because of the currency. Yes, Japan is a destination for workers because currently we don't have a hotel university or hotel school here in Japan. Then for people who want to work in that field, yes, there is many opportunities.
And so, okay, Tessa. So
No, the most difficult part is to find a company who can provide the visa and who can support the visa.
yes.
And there is only two ways, the marital status, the skilled labor, or the working holiday visa.
Oh, good, Tessa.
What was the third one? So the
Working
Marie
holiday visa.
working visa.
Yeah,
It permits you to work 40 hours per week only.
yes.
And also you can come to learn Japanese. And also to survive in Japan, it permits you to work 40 hours per week.
Okay. Okay. And on top of that, you also need to make sure you have the right network, Tessa. And also depending on your situation, what we want to highlight in this webinar is there are three aspects that are important when we are in a new environment. First, of course, it's to progress in our business job. So join professional network, meet like-minded people, and look for opportunity to meet Japanese whenever it's possible. We need to manage ourselves. So we talked today about the importance of building that community and to surround ourselves with peers, and also to ensure the proper backup. It could be a family if we move here as a family, but also our friend. Invest in the self-awareness, especially time management. It's really important because we say that we have to reinvent ourselves. So there are some things to invest here and prioritize our self-care, and then to manage our others, especially if you are you have responsibility and you manage a team, network, work on your communication style, and so on. And also make sure you share about your professional hurdle so it doesn't hinder your performance and it doesn't affect also your well-being. So the idea is that we are launching our community. So we do believe that creating that community, that sense of belonging is important. And so you can approach us anytime if you are interested. Sandrine.
I think that we all have been disappointed because you try your guts, you test the trust, and then you share your hurdles, and then you realize that the person in front of you has another agenda than yours. So everyone will be disappointed when trying to trust someone, and I think that we need to keep on going until we find people that you can really trust and surrounded by them, and then you will find. But for sure, we will trust people that we should not trust. And the point is that we need to realize that as quickly as possible and then move on. To finish on a positive note.
Okay, so we have a few minutes for question. I don't know if Alisa who is with us as well, or Tessa, you have any question that you would like to raise on this topic?
I actually have a question for Richard.
Mhm.
So as someone that's not Japanese, that didn't grow up in Japan, you mentioned that the second time you came to Japan, you learned the language, you had a wife that guided you through all the Japanese cultural nuances. Do you believe these are the two main things that contributed to your success in Japan?
Oh, we can't hear you, Risha.
And also, you know what? I changed my mind because I was not prepared to live in Japan. And you know what? Also, it was when I came, I was very young, and it was difficult for me to project myself in a country where I couldn't manage anything. I mean, when I came, I was like a baby, you know. If you need something, if you need to open a bank account, if you go to the city office, or you need to ask somebody to help you. And it's very difficult to ask somebody to help you, you know, particularly for private things. And it took me a long years to understand the place where I want to live will be Japan. And it was very difficult to convince me to accept my life will be here. And since I agree with myself, I have a totally different life in Japan.
Mm.
But
So it's a change of mindset that made you grow in your career path and be successful.
yes, and you know, at the end of the day, you need to have a family, to have a house, to work with people, and if it has to be in America, in Australia, or Japan, but it's belonging on you, only on you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Alisa, for the question. No more questions, Sandrine? Or Tessa?
Is it no? Tessa, do you have a question? No.
No, I'm okay. I was just indeed like a bit curious on the hospitality because of course we know like because of the tourism, it's really gonna grow. And that's why I'm asking some questions also to see what kind of possibilities I could have doing a job in Japan, because I'm considering to come back in January on the student work visa to start and then see indeed if there's or maybe some options in the hospitality.
Yes, there is many opportunities. You know, currently we have we need more people in F&B and hospitality. As I told you, currently we are working with 45 luxury hotels from Niseko to Okinawa because every company is now they are struggling about labor. Japanese people, they are not so afford to work in hospitality, and it's difficult for foreigners to get their visa. We have a few immigration now in Japan. And of course, it's very interesting because the young people who were attracted to work in hospitality in Japan, now they are moving to abroad, to Australia, to many destinations, because for sure they can get more money, more salary for taking in account the currency, the current currency.
I have a question for you, Tessa. Because you left Japan after moving, so you moved to Japan for a few months and then you left. Was it linked to a professional hurdle? And if yes, from what we shared today, is it some takeaway that you can?
Yeah, I think like for me, indeed, I was prepared, and I have been abroad for like several times, also professionally, also individually on myself, doing a lot of traveling. But I think like the main hurdle was communication indeed. Like for me, it was very difficult to to find indeed like local friends. Although I have like I was really engaged in a yoga studio, because I'm also like besides doing a job in fashion, I also did like yoga teaching, so I also was engaged so in a yoga studio, so there was indeed like there's some communication and some connections. But apart from that, I think the most difficult thing for me, because I also lived like a few months in New York when I was 20. And of course, there's really like a melting pot of different cultures, and it's more easy to connect. And for me, like the part of communication was like the most difficult part. Because you always feel like someone on the outside, and you just want to have like certain connections with your neighbor or some people in the supermarket, in these kind of things. Because when you travel alone, or when you decide to go to a foreign country by yourself, then you get some energy also from these kind of small encounters.
Interaction.
And for me, I think that's also personality wise. I'm kind of like an extroverted introvert. So I think that's also the main reason why I think I could survive in a country as Japan. But I'm not that kind of introvert to have no communication at all. So, and also the intensity of my language school was like after a few months, like too much. And then I decided to go back home. But honestly, as I told you, ladies, already like after a few months, I really feel that there's still a craving to go back, and maybe it's something in between, maybe it's something with a Belgian company who's willing to invest in Japan and needs someone as a like a lobbyist or like a public relations, though these kind of things. So, but I think my main hurdle was indeed like, yeah, it is another culture, and I respect the culture so much, but I think the communication part was for me the most difficult.
Yes, and the isolation risk is higher here in Japan. That's why we need to build that community. It's really important. But the difficult, what we realize with Sandrine, is also difficult to create that awareness of people that are willing to move to Japan, and even by making this kind of webinar, it's difficult to really open the eye of the the candidates to help them
because
understand.
I think now I understand, because I've been through it
The
already.
experience,
For me, it's actually very nice to hear now other people also having the same issues. So for me, already a nice start. If I will go back.
Hearing others people experience, I think, help as well. Okay, so thank you everyone for today. So our next webinar is on the 28th of May. This time is about the connection with the home country. So they don't see you, they forget about you, and how to stay connected from abroad, especially on the professional aspect, because when you're far from, when you move here for a few years, you know that you will return at some point. It's really key to rebuild that network as well. And if you want to follow us and keep in touch, here we have all the information. So do not hesitate. Thank you, Richard, for sharing your experience. I think we could have go through another hour, and it was really interesting. And then thank you all for being with us today.
Thank you.